The bridge, arguably the heart of any Star Trek vessel. Welcome to Inner Space 6. In this episode, DP's long-running USS Phobos asset finally gets a bridge interior. But before we dive into this newest build, how did we get here? Well, we have to go back to the start of 2019. This is DP's first test animation of the Phobos, as she was originally launched in the early 2000s by creator Kevin Riley. Now at this point, the model is pretty much stock, save for some scattered geometry repairs and a few tweaks to the ship's lighting effects. You'll notice that even then, her new DP narrative was being written. The USS Phobos belonged to the last generation of Starfleet vessels to be constructed with the TMP saucer specifications. Externally, new starships at the turn of the 24th century weren't so removed from those constructed during Captain Kirk's tenure, but inside, things were changing. The technology and aesthetics were evolving, and in 5 or 6 decades, these changes would manifest as the TNG era. Thus, the USS Phobos occupies part of the lost transitional period in Star Trek's screen canon. I had the model for less than a month, and I was already deep into constructing a shuttle bay, where there once was nothing but a massive door. This interior space was DP's first Phobos build project, but it wasn't the first interior completed. Concurrently with the shuttle bay, I was countering Kevin's choice of redundant arboretums by replacing the portside facility with an engineering lounge, or E-lounge. And with these first 2 interior build projects, DP's inner space production concept was born. The inaugural 3-part series remains one of my favorite memories from DP's YouTube days, because now the builds were being shaped by community involvement. Inner Space 1 concluded in spring 2020 with the starship's new starboard viewing room. The sequel series spawned 5 episodes, running from late 2020 through fall 2022. Here, the mission scope expanded to several interior builds: the starboard mission module bay and the upper observation deck, the portside auxiliary bay, and new for this year, the upper deck living quarters. The new bridge interior was built to be highly detailed, almost photorealistic. All the previous interiors were assembled to provide decent camera detail during typical flyby animations and space exterior shots. But the camera never sees this space, so I decided to approach our new interior as if it were a set piece designed only for showcase renderings. Having never constructed a bridge before, I made use of a 23-year-old mesh by Sean Robertson. Sean released his USS Olympus bridge back in 2001 in the style of TNG. So I set out to retro design and retro build 6 decades into Starfleet's past. For this newest interior project, I made use of Sean's rim dimensions and his floor contours as templates. The peripheral elements were constructed first, and then work progressed inwardly, with the dome ceiling wrapping up the build. There are 2 standing stations behind the captain's chair, and then 3 seated stations port and starboard. Here we see the master situation and tactical stations, which are flanked by the turbolift doors servicing Deck 1. Along the port side are communications, environment, and engineering. This Loknar bridge continues the tradition of clock displays, but at some point in the development of starship design, it was understood that these devices could really be expanded to also display alerts, status codes, and other simple text. Thus, here we see the viewer clock alerting the bridge to a proximity update. Along the starboard side are the auxiliary systems, mission ops, and science stations. This starboard accessway at door 1A is where the vessel's dedication plaque is mounted. This finishing touch to Inner Space 6 not only provided a new way to recognize and involve the D-Patron community, but it forced me to formalize the Starship's story. In this narrative's timeline, the USS Phobos was officially launched in her original configuration on June 10th, 2298, so just a few years after Star Trek VI. DP's involvement began 12 years later in 2310. Then, on September 15th, 2312, the ship underwent a Mark V enhanced refit. This refit event thus explains all the DP upgrades since our acquisition. Here's Kevin Riley, the person who created the original Phobos model nearly 20 years ago. Kevin really was a lieutenant in real life, and so with this plaque, we honor his 3D modeling and service contributions. In the DP verse, the USS Phobos has been in service now for almost 15 years. What lies ahead for this sexy frigate? As Starfleet and Starship design continue to evolve in the 24th century, she'll eventually have to give way to the next generation and be decommissioned. But for now, the USS Phobos remains relevant in her time.